Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Anne Ganguzza, and today I am thrilled to welcome very special guest, Kelly Moscinski. Kelly, the owner and head of casting at the VoiceCaster, which very impressively is the oldest voiceover casting house in the country, established in 1975. So with almost 20 years of experience in voiceover and even more in entertainment, Kelly casts and directs all things voiceover. She's also a coach for voice actors, teaching group classes, private coaching, and I am so excited that she's going to be teaching a VO Boss workshop coming up on July 16th, which I'm super excited for.
Yeah,
she is also the founder of the VoiceCaster Lab, a digital VO training and community platform offering a variety of learn at your own pace courses, seminars, a membership community, and other resources dedicated to giving voiceover artists the chance to learn from the casting perspective, which is so important. Kelly, it is absolutely wonderful to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am just excited to chat with you. I feel like it's been not so long ago that I saw you, but we kind of just pass each other. We're always on these schedules, which are insanely busy. And I always think that, I think I'm pretty busy in this industry, but my goodness, you're doing an awful lot over there at the VoiceCaster with your classes, and you've got all sorts of fun new things that I've seen you come out with this year. So for the bosses who are not familiar with you, let's kind of start at the beginning and tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry and your casting journey. What led you to the VoiceCaster?
Yeah, so for me, it was, I did drama club, theater in high school. When I went to college, I originally went to school for pre-med. I wanted to be a psychiatrist, so I was focusing on psychology. And then from there, I was so involved in the theater department, and eventually, after a little hesitation, I decided to get my degree in theater instead of following the pre-med path I had. And then I got my master's degree in writing, and, it was kind of while I was working on that, I had friends. I was doing a ton of directing, so I just had some friends who were working at local radio and TV stations. They'd ask me for advice on an actor. I need this kind of a voice for a spot, so I was starting to do some voiceover before I even really realized what I was getting into. And then I moved out to Los Angeles, and, I had actually interviewed in the same week at VoiceCaster and at a talent agency. Talent agency wanted to bring me on as an agent, and VoiceCaster wanted me to come on as a casting assistant. And I was like, you know what? I feel like casting is my calling. I get to cast, I get to direct. There were opportunities to teach, all of the things I wanted were kind of all in one with VoiceCaster. And, as soon as I walked into the office, I was like, yeah, this is home. And so I kind of knew right away. And then that was in 2009. In 2013, the previous owner, Huck Liggett, came to me and said, I'm retiring. I'm gone in 2 weeks. Do you want to take over? I've had other offers. Yeah, he's like, I had other offers, a lot of money. He's like, but I don't want just anyone to take over. And so he's like, if you don't want it, we're closing down the doors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
what a compliment. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny because I actually had just gotten back from a week vacation when he came to me on that Monday, and he pulled me aside. I thought I was getting fired. I was like, oh no, what's going on? What did I do? What happened while I was gone? It was only a week. But who knew it was going to be the next big step in my career?
Wow.
And yeah, so then within 2 weeks, I took over completely. So it was a very quick transition, but like I said, as soon as my foot stepped in that office, I just knew that this is where I was going to be.
Isn't that funny? It's like when you step into a home, when you're buying a home, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this is it, right?
Okay.
I have so many questions because you seem to just go from like, oh, I went to school for, pre-med, and then all of a sudden I decided to switch directions. And so I think, with a lot of people that go from, because I was in a very, I was an engineer when I graduated college with an engineering degree, and then I went into education and then went into voiceover. And did you get any pushback from people in your life that said, hey, it's obvious that you have multiple talents, and there's always those people that kind of the naysayers that are like, really? Like theater or, the arts. And so tell us, did you have any pushback from, let's say, family members or loved ones about that?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I originally was like, oh, I can't just go into theater. So maybe I can teach theater. So I decided to take the education track kind of in between that. And within like 3 semesters, I think, I had all of the classes I had needed for an education degree. I just never did the student teaching. So I could have gotten my education degree as well. But instead I was like, no, I want to commit to this. This is all I can see myself doing. So why have the plan B? It's like when you have plan B, you fall back on plan B. And it's like,
that's a really great perspective. I like that because you felt it, and I think you went for it, and that's so, I love that because I feel like I'm kind of that person too. Like if you feel so strongly about it, I feel like, well, that's where I'm supposed to be, and that's where I should be, and I feel like my work ethic was there to drive it to the place where it needed to be. And I think a lot of times I never second guess my intuition, my gut feeling. I feel like that might be the same thing for you.
Absolutely.
So then along the way, right, to becoming like, first of all, to have someone say to you, I'm going to close the doors if you don't take over. First of all, that's what a compliment. And so obviously, there's just a ton of talent there. Did you have, it sounds like you had no hardships along the way, but I feel like you might have. Like
I definitely did.
So tell us about maybe, a hardship or something that was a challenge for you.
Yeah. So, first of all, it was, through college, my dad was battling leukemia. And so it's like he was actually in a hospital in the same city that I was going to school. And so, I was going over there every day before rehearsals, after classes, anytime I could kind of sneak in, I would go over to the hospital and see him. And it's like he couldn't come to my graduation. He couldn't come to some of our shows because just too many people. And, when you're going through cancer treatments, you have to be careful of that. And so, part of, I stuck around to get my master's degree. I think I would have probably left after my bachelor's degree, but I stuck around to get my master's degree. I started dating my now husband. And so I was like, I guess I'll stick around for this guy. I'll stick around for my family, and I was originally going to go to New York, because I wanted to work in the Broadway world, and then, he actually convinced me, my husband Travis convinced me to come to LA. So we moved to LA with nothing. And it took me, I sent out back in the day when you send out, cover letters and resumes through the mail, not email,
I do remember those days.
I sent out over 350 just different casting offices, talent agencies, knowing like this is where I want to be. And I can be a very determined person. So it's like, it's one of those things where it can be challenging, and it's like we went through all of our savings, like we had nothing, and it was very much one of those things where I'm like, okay, I took a theater job here, I took another job here. It's like I started to work retail customer service. It lasted about 3 days, and then a theater job and then a theater job fell in my lap. They weren't willing to work with my theater hours, so I was like, well, I'm going to take the lower paying job because it's what I want to do. And that's actually how I met Catherine originally. And, so it's like I was just taking all these things that I could, stage managing, things like that. And I was like, we have to do something to make money. And it's like, luckily, you know, my husband was like, he does construction as well. So he ended up working for a couple of TV shows where he was building sets and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, and then Huck called and he was like, I have been hanging on to your resume since I got it last June, and just waiting for an opening. So it's like he kind of knew this was perfect. It came at the perfect timing. You know, it's one of those things where I'm like, I always feel like things fall into place exactly when they're supposed to. You know, we were in that limbo of like, are we really going to make it here? You know, like we're going to have to start borrowing money from family or something soon. Like what are we doing? Like, this is crazy. So yeah, then, you know, VoiceCaster fell into place, and
there's that determination,
you know, things,
I think,
yes,
that came through. That's so interesting because I have a little bit of a similar story when we moved out west. I mean, from the East Coast, and you know, we moved out for a job for my husband, and ultimately 9 months later, he got laid off, and so then everybody said, "Well, when are you coming back?" And I'm like, "No," and I was like, "Oh, by the way, I quit my job in education and said, oh, I'm going to try to do this voiceover thing full time. So Jerry, you're going to have to float me for a little bit." And interestingly enough, we just determination. And I was like, I am not going back because I love the weather too much, and I really was starting to love California. I was like, I don't want to go back to the snow and the property taxes, but I did love the East Coast. And it was like I was just determined to make that work. So good for you. I mean, wow. And so let's talk a little bit about casting and your love for casting. And you know, you said in your bio, or in the form that I have you fill out, that connection beats perfection every time. I'd love to hear you elaborate on that in terms of, you know, casting either a voice talent or just any kind of talent.
Honestly, that is kind of my theory in life. You know, I mean, it's in voiceover. It is just in life. You know, it's one of those things where so often I feel like we all strive for some sort of level of perfection. And it's this thing that, me too. Me too. And it's something that we set for ourselves. You know, it's like we set this bar for ourselves. Nobody else is telling us what perfect means. You know, so it's like we're putting these things on ourselves, and it, you know, it is one of those things where I always say 70% perfect is perfect. It does not have to be perfect. You know, done is better than perfect. Connection over perfection is my way of saying I would much rather hear you connected to the script and connected, having a point of view, having an intention, having an audience, all of that, versus every word being perfectly articulate. A few weeks ago, I cast somebody in a it was a commercial, and she actually slurred a word. Most people wouldn't even submit that audition, right? It's like, oh, I got to clean that up. No, it was one of those things where so often now I am hearing clients say, we want to hear the humanness. We want to hear the imperfections. We want to hear the flaws. So it's not about being perfect. They'll make you perfect in the session. Sure. If you want to book the job, it is more about having that connection. And that's something that we can hear in those first 3 to 5 seconds that we listen to.
I love that, and I love that you say that, because I mean, I always in my genres that I'm kind of known for in corporate narration and e-learning, everybody thinks articulation is, you know, they have to say it perfectly. I'm like, please don't, because that's super robotic and super boring, and it's not something that people like to listen to for any length of time. Maybe for a few words I can handle it if you do something articulately, but I'm that teacher that will say, please, I just need to understand you, but you know, slur it a little bit, like jam those words together. I don't need to hear perfection at all. As a matter of fact, please don't. I can't listen to more than a sentence of it. And so I love that you say that as well, because I think really and you also, you know, talked about hearing that from the very beginning, like from the first words of the script. You can hear it if somebody's not connected, and you can hear it if they're just kind of glossing over the words or reading the words. Let's talk a little bit more about that, the importance of, because in our workshop, which I'm going to have you talk about in just a minute, I mean, it's all about auditioning for commercial genres. And so what is it that gets listened to? What is it that books the gig or gets them shortlisted?
Yeah, it comes down to personality. It comes down to, you know, do they sound like they have an opinion? Do they sound like they're connected to the copy? Is there something else going on besides I'm reading a commercial script? You know, so we hear so many commercials. You know, we have all heard thousands and thousands of commercials that when we look at a script, we know what it's going to sound like.
Yes. It's like there's a melody in our heads.
Yes. And it's, it's such a battle then to get out of it. Yeah. But really, like, that's not the read that's going to book the job.
Right.
It's going to be the thing that is just uniquely you, where it's like, oh, wow, the final spot would never be like that. But you showed the personality. You made the choices. You had the commitment. And that is what stands out. That's what books you the job. And then you get into the session, and that's when they're like, okay, well, let's clean this up. Let's smooth this out. Let's inflect it. And all of a sudden it sounds exactly like you heard in your head. But you will not book the job if you give that read, because it's boring.
Can we let's just say that one more time for the bosses out there, because I've had so many students say, but that's not what I hear. And I'm like, but that's not what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you to audition and get the job first, and then whatever happens, happens. I mean, you don't need me as a coach to tell you what it sounds like in your head. We all hear it. And I think we all innately know what that melody is. And you don't need me to coach you, but you need me to coach you how to be an actor so that you can get the job. And then ultimately, I love that you said it does. It's, a lot of times it will end up sounding like what we heard in our head.
It will.
But to get the job, you've got to show the people that are listening, or at least get their attention, because everybody else hears that same melody in their head. And if you're listening, tell us what it's like to listen to 200, auditions in a row with the same melody, with everybody just being predictable. I think it's the person that, and let's talk a little bit more about point of view, because I think sometimes people don't understand what point of view means. And especially when it comes to commercial, well, shouldn't I have a point of view that is of the company that I'm working for? Or how do I have my own point of view, and why does that matter? And so people would ask me that as well. Why should I have a point of view when it comes to e-learning? Why should I have a point of view when it comes to corporate? Why should I have a point of view for an explainer? Let's talk about point of view.
Yeah, so point of view, there's a few different parts to it. So first of all, there is, what point of view are you coming from? Are you coming from the company point of view? Are you the pro? Are you the expert? Do you know what you're talking about? I can tell you that, for certain products, you have to be a certain level of expert on the product. Otherwise, how are we going to trust you when you're talking about, medical or pharmaceutical or, something like that, where it's like, we need to be able to trust you. However, there's also the other side where it's you are the user. Did you just discover this and you're excited to share it? Or have you been using it for a little bit and you want to share it with your friend? Or, so it's like you can either be the expert, or you can be the real life user of the product. So usually, especially if we're sticking into the conversational zone, then you're going to want to be the user. You don't want to, even if the script says our product, blah, 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 or we do this, like when it's very clearly from the brand point of view, you still need to, your point of view should still be more personal than that. It's, the product, you love the product.
Exactly.
But also having an opinion, and it's like not just the anticipated opinion or the typical opinion.
Right.
It's like, if there's something in the script that is like, wow, this is really cool, like, then let us hear how cool you think that is. Like, that's something that's going to stand out. It's going to be different when other people do. It's like so many commercials, they have 3 product features, right? And so it's like some people say, oh, we'll build each of those, or give each one a little bit of a different, coloring, or, things like that. And it's like, my thing is, which is your favorite? Just
Yeah,
tell me which one is your favorite.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to
Yep.
stick with me
Yep.
more than anything else.
Yeah, and it'll all make sense, because I don't think there's ever a point of view from a company standpoint, unless you're in some sort of a parody or a character dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Where you're going to be angry about it, or you're going to
Yeah.
be mad about it, or you're going to be crying about it, or
Exactly.
you won't like it, right?
Yep.
For the most part, you have to come from that place of authority. You have to like the product. You have to believe in it. And I think that's where the shades of the point of view of you can come through. And you can make that choice. Like, I like how you said, like, some people will be like, okay, there's different shades of your point of view for different features. But I think as an actor, you make that choice. You make that choice about what do you think is a little bit more important than the other. And then, not that they're not the three features are not important, but like maybe one you like a little bit better than the other, and one you're just going to bring that out a little bit more. And that's what's going to be so different than, let's say, anybody else that's just glossing over it and want to just make it sound like. And because a lot of times when you're making it sound like something, you're so concerned about how it sounds that you have no time to really go into your point of view. I mean, you're so busy listening to yourself that you can't think about your point of view, because that's a lot to do when there's words in front of you, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, point of view I think is so important, and especially coming in with a point of view in the first few words or the first line. And so let me ask you, out of so many auditions that you would get, how often do you listen to the entire audition? Do you I mean, can you just, like, right away?
I know. So everybody gets about 3 to 5 seconds, and that is also why I say, like, lead with your riskier take, your bolder take, the one with the personality, because you only get 3 to 5 seconds, On any given project, I have usually between 400 and 1,200 auditions.
Wow, that's a lot.
It gets crazy. So it's like, I can't give people more than 3 to 5 seconds. So then from there, I'm sorting all of the auditions.
Sure.
Once I narrow it down, then I will look at the people that I, passed on to the second round. And usually by that point, I have like 100 left, maybe 150.
Wow.
And then I will listen to...
I'm just thinking, I'm taking the lower number, right? 400 auditions, and you give them 5 seconds apiece. How long is that? I mean, how long does it take you to, you know what I mean? Is it a day? Is it...
Usually start to finish in a project like that. I mean, there are some projects, I mean, on the lower end, it's like I can knock them out in a couple hours.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot to listen to in a couple hours. So that's why leading with the riskier one, leading with the one that is even... Sometimes I'll even say it's got to be a different melody, but I don't want you to think about it as a melody, right? Think about it as a different point of view that drives the fact that it sounds different.
Yep. And you emphasize a different word because you have a different intention on that take, or, things like that.
And I love that you said, like, you said that there was a slur on somebody that you cast.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I have a favorite corporate video that I play when I speak at places and I talk about corporate and how it really is storytelling. And one of my favorite corporate videos is voiced by an artist that has a rasp and a lisp. And she slurs her words a little bit, and it's the most beautiful take because her point of view is nuanced, and it actually brings you along this journey throughout this 2-minute video. And you don't even have to watch the video; you can just listen to it. And it's so nuanced that I thought to myself, gosh. I usually will give somebody the script and I'll say, well, this is super easy to just say conversationally, right? But she had so many different notes, so many different points of view that she just really told the story. And I think that is the most important thing. And when it comes to commercials, let's talk about stories in commercials. Are you a believer that every commercial has a story to tell?
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like there is the commercial is happening because there is something either new or improved, right? So it's like there's always a problem and solution. And so, the problem is because things are happening to real people. So it really is figuring out the story. And that's why, having that point of view, but also an intention, your intention is obviously not to sell. course
Right.
it is. It's a commercial. But
Right.
if you are playing the intention to
sound like
sell,
you're
it's exactly. You're either getting them excited, or you're reassuring them, or you're informing someone, or, there's so many different things that you can play that are not to sell. But yeah, it's absolutely telling that story. Even in the short scripts, there's still something behind that. And part of your job as an actor is, what is that pre-life? It's like I always say, a commercial should be thought of like a slice of life. It is mid-conversation. Something is happening before this that prompted you to say this to somebody. Something is going to happen after this.
Love it. And there's pre-life, I think, for every genre, for every script, really.
Absolutely.
And I think there's pre-life also, which I try to teach, because if I'm doing longer format narration, you can't forget about life in the middle of the script, or life 3/4 of the way through the script, because a lot of times people will just slip back into that kind of melody.
Yep.
And it's really hard to keep someone engaged. I mean, you think it's hard to keep someone engaged for 60 seconds, right? I mean, try to keep them engaged for a couple of minutes. And that is, I think, that the pre-life can happen before many sentences in that script. And I think that it's important to consider that as you go through the script. So what would you say is the biggest mistake that voice actors make in their auditions, that either just is an immediate dismissal, or or sometimes angers you?
So two things come to mind. First thing is labeling, following the instructions. Like, it sounds so basic, but out of 400 auditions, I'll usually have at least 20 or 30 who aren't even labeled correctly. So I don't even give them 5 seconds. They just instantly are like, nope, I'm done. They couldn't follow instructions. So that's number one, so it's follow instructions.
Isn't it funny? That's your number one.
I know.
Follow instructions.
I know.
I'm like that too. I'm like, my God, if you can't even name it right. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I will take that as a personal insult to my time, because I literally, if I can't, 400, you said 400 to 1,000?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine handling 1,000 files, and if they're not named correctly, right, and you can't organize. I mean, organization is so important.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to figuring out who am I, who do I like? Here's my short list. Here's who are you going to recommend? And I think file naming is so darn important, and I don't understand why. It's so difficult sometimes.
That's how I am too. I'm like, I try to keep it so simple in our instructions, but.
Okay, so file naming is one. What's another?
And then the other one is trying to be who you think we want you to be. Giving us the read that you think is the right read, or the read that we want. I will tell you that we don't know what we want. The client doesn't know what they want. It's like they might have an idea, but sometimes they hear something different and they're like, oh, that's brilliant, And so it's don't try to be what you think we want you to be. You have to be yourself, because what we want is you. As you are,
like
authentic, unapologetically you.
And I think sometimes, would you say that the creative process is not complete yet? A lot of times we think we're the last to be hired. And so I feel sometimes when people are like, well, I didn't expect that. I auditioned for that and I did not expect that one to book the job. When I feel like, even if the casting specs, if it's something completely different than the casting specs. So would you say that if somebody writes the casting specs, 9 times out of 10, does it turn out to be different than what they're looking for? Or...
or some variation of it, because you've seen the specs where they're like, oh, we want it really mellow and laid back, but it has to have high energy and be upbeat, and it's like the specs contradict each other, and so it's like, well, then what do they want? Typically that's because there are multiple people in these meetings, and it's like, oh, okay, one person wants it laid back and mellow, another wants it upbeat with high energy, and so those get kind of mushed into one. So that's kind of, you don't know what they want, because there are 6 people deciding, and they all want different things.
Yeah. Right. So it's not always just one person that's deciding.
Yep.
And let's talk about the copywriting. Because,
yes.
There's a lot of times when the copywriting doesn't match what the specs really want. Like they'll say conversational, but yet the writing will be very selly. And so what is your best advice for voice actors in that case?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, I always recommend recording a couple of takes before you even look at the specs. You know, so it's like you do whatever your instinct is. And then look at the specs and see, you know, how that changes. That might be a different take. It might be you scrap all the other stuff, you know, altogether. But it is tricky when it is written as an announcer script introducing the all new blah blah blah, you know, and it's like, oh, but we want it conversational, super casual, you know. So it is a matter of, you know, I always say subtext first of all. So instead of introducing, it's like, hey, check this out, or you know, kind of substituting that in your mind, making sure. I think the biggest thing when they're asking for conversational authentic is making sure that you are still connecting. You still have that point of view. You still have that intention. It's really easy to lose when you have a word like introducing or, you know, something that's very selly. So it's kind of, you know, still keeping that story, keeping all of the acting elements in there is key. And then if you find like, I can't get out of this, it's just sounding so selly, it's sounding so announcery, then honestly, lean into that and do a take or two like that, because then you have it out, you have it there, and you're not fighting yourself. So it's a little easier once you get that out to then try to just bring it in a little bit more and personalize.
Would you then recommend to maybe have that take as the second take?
Yeah.
And if you are encouraging people to do more than one take per audition?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. If it's your only take to send, I wouldn't do it because they're going to be like, they didn't follow directions. But absolutely, especially if, you know, a lot of times we ask for 2 or 3 takes. That'd be a great second or third take, you know, especially if, you know, it felt good as you were doing it, then yeah, it's absolutely submittable.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because I am excited that you're going to be, yay, and you're going to be doing a VO Boss now, because VO Peeps is now merged into VO Boss, but you're going to be doing a VO Boss workout for commercial auditioning. So talk a little bit about what we're going to cover in that class.
Yeah, so one of the things, so going back to these 3 to 5 seconds, that is something that I want to make sure that we cover. So I am actually I'm stringing together 3 to 5 seconds of multiple auditions, 50, 60 auditions. So you can hear what I get to hear on the casting side.
I love that.
Yeah, so you'll be able to hear if people are connected or not. You'll be able to hear everything that you can hear. And then I'll play the final, you know, I'll play the audition that booked it and then the final spot so that you can kind of see, you know, how things change throughout the process. But I think kind of giving you a glance into the casting side will help you realize like, oh, okay, it's like I can say it a million times, but until you hear it, it's not going to stick. And then you will never look at the opening sentence of your auditions the same again. You know, it's going to transform how you read and what you submit.
I feel like that is probably one of the most important things, is that very first sentence. And I always talk about it in terms of like melody, in terms of singing, like if you just start with the first word and you don't have a pre-life, it all starts pretty much on the same note. And I feel like that's not necessarily in the starting it in the right way, or starting it in the way that's going to showcase the fact that you have a pre-life and that you're connected and you have a story to tell and a purpose. And so I'm very excited about, that's going to be really, really valuable for our listeners. So very excited about that, bosses.
Awesome.
I'm quite sure by the time we air this that we may be sold out. I'm not sure, but you can always check out voboss.com, and we'll be having audit tickets as well as participants. So I'm so excited, Kelly, that you're going to be doing this.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Tell us a little bit about, because we kind of do similar things. I mean, we have a membership, we have a community, we coach classes. Tell us a little bit about your classes and your community.
Yeah, absolutely. So through VoiceCaster, we have all different levels of classes, beginning to pros. We do commercial. We have animation and video games. We have an accent class. All of those are live classes that we do. Most of them are online. We do have some in studio as well here in Los Angeles. And then we have the VoiceCaster Lab, which has a Basics of VoiceOver, Learn at Your Own Pace course, as well as our signature Finding Your Authentic Voice course as well. And so those are both learn at your own pace kind of a thing. And then on top of that, we also have our VoiceCaster Insiders membership, which is an online community. And that is essentially, we do weekly workouts, open to all members. We do monthly calls for any, Q&A, all of that. We do monthly challenges where you can, working on different parts of the business, performance, business, mindset, all of that. And we do prizes at the end. And then... Nice. Yeah, and then we have daily things. So we have like our Monday motivation, our Take Action Tuesday, Wednesday wisdom, so it's like we're doing things 7 days a week. And yeah, it's been a great community for people just to kind of have a place to go as a sounding board and, doing the workouts and, all of that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's been a lot of fun for us as well as the members, and myself. Ben and Catherine are, active in there every day. So, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you what people ask me. How do you do it all?
Yeah. I don't sleep.
I hear that.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot, and it's it's really prioritizing my days. Kind of figuring out as much as I can, because you also know, like, we're in a business where things change real quick, and it's like, hey, I need to get somebody in for a session. Hey, I need this casting done by yesterday. Hey, I need, so, putting out fires, but trying to, have my set schedule as much as possible as well.
Well, oh my gosh, it's been so nice talking with you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm very excited about our workshop that's coming up, guys, July 16th, and check that out at voboss.com. And I guess leave us with your one best piece of advice for anybody new coming into this industry. What would you recommend?
Be you. Be uniquely you. Whatever makes you you, be that. And always, in everything that you do. I mean, that's life advice, but it's also voiceover advice. It's like, just be yourself. If you are determined, if you have the passion, if you have the love for this industry, then show up as yourself, and that is going to take you further than anything else.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much again. Bosses, I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can connect and network like bosses. Find out more at IPDTL.com. Guys, have an amazing week, and we will see you next week.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.